Chapter 17. New Challenges, October to December 1943. When war broke out in 1939, as Nazi tanks stormed across the Polish border, it would have been virtually impossible to predict just how far-reaching the consequences of Adolf Hitler's actions would be. By the winter of 1943, from the north, south, east and west, the battle cries rang out across the globe, and the atrocities visited upon innocent civilians, particularly those of the Jewish faith, became ever more horrifically apparent. But as Hitler's Axis powers crushed and subjugated entire populations, news of Nazi and Japanese crimes against humanity served to fuel Allied determination to win the war as quickly as possible. The plight of those held in concentration camps was no longer hidden from view, and although it would still be some considerable time before surviving inmates would be liberated, there was now at least hope for some of them. What's more, as October 1943 drew to a close, a formal Allied agreement to set up a United Nations Commission on War Crimes was put in place. Those responsible for atrocities would be called upon to account for their actions, and following orders would be no defense. The months of October, November and December 1943 saw the culmination of many campaigns, and the foundations were laid for many more. Events in the Pacific were rapidly gathering momentum 2 years on from the surprise Japanese attack on the American naval fleet at Pearl. Without doubt, the devastating efficiency of Japan's air force makes this one of the most well-known offensives of the entire Second World War. But through the course of this chapter, you'll discover that there were also many less well-known skirmishes in the Pacific that were equally fascinating. As well as considering these events in the Pacific, we'll also be focusing on the Allied campaign in Italy, following on from victory over Hitler's troops in North Africa. And all the while, the conflict in Russia was becoming ever more significant, particularly as alliances shifted in the build-up to the Cairo and Teheran conferences, as the blueprint for the Allies' endgame took shape. So, beginning on October 1st, 1943, new challenges take us to Italy, where Allied forces entered the harbour city of Naples. The complex politics of Italy and the nation's position in World War II meant that the people of Naples had already revolted against the German army of occupation before the Allies arrived. However, to get a true understanding of the events in Italy in 1943, we really need to backtrack to the end of the First World War. Just as Adolf Hitler rose to prominence in Germany in the aftermath of World War I, in Italy, Benito Mussolini followed a very similar route to power. Born in 1883, the son of a blacksmith, Mussolini moved to Switzerland in 1902 in search of work, and it was here that he became involved in socialist politics. When he returned to Italy in 1904, it was to become a journalist with a socialist publication, but he broke away from the socialists when they opposed Italy's entry into World War I, and when he was drafted in 1915, Mussolini took up arms for his country. In all, Mussolini saw about 9 months active service, but in the years after the war, he returned to the political arena, this time not as a socialist, but by forming the Fascist Party early in 1919. Like Adolf Hitler in Germany, Mussolini believed he would be his nation's savior, and where discontent was rife, he found his supporters. Many unemployed war veterans followed where Mussolini led, and were organized into squads of black shirts who terrorized their political opponents. It was the beginning of a dark age of oppression for the Italian people, and when the fascists were invited to join a coalition government in 1921, things went from bad to worse when the black shirts marched on Rome. Even the King of Italy, Victor Emmanuel III, turned to Mussolini, inviting the self-styled Il Duce to form a government with disastrous consequences, as by 1925 democracy had been dismantled. Italy found itself in the grip of a dictator every bit as unpredictable as Adolf Hitler was becoming in Germany. After the Wall Street crash of 1929 saw the world fall into an economic depression, the 1930s found both Hitler and Mussolini's empire building at an alarming rate. In Mussolini's case, Abyssinia, today better known as Ethiopia, was the main target. As well as gaining inroads into Africa, Mussolini also supported General Franco in the Spanish Civil War, and more importantly,
Sample complete. Ready to continue?